I would like to take this opportunity to greet all of you who are watching this. This is the sixth East African Mental Health Conference. My name is Mr. Peter Durito from Kenya. And my topic is healing trauma through personal and community bond. I think number one thing is just to define terms here. What is trauma? You know, when you think about trauma, what comes to your mind? The trauma, in short, is wound, you know, as a result of shock, as a result of situations that happened in the past and came about as a shock. And so it formed a wound in the heart. So what is then trauma in your own language, for example? In Swahili here, they even say kiwewe, you know. But what is it in your own dialect? How do you know someone is traumatized, for example? And you take like a bit of a minute just to list some of the symptoms that tells you that someone is traumatized. And based on the list that you just, took time to write, are you aware that you may be dealing with trauma in your life that you do not see? You know, historically, there are many references that we can relate trauma incidences with. For example, I was listening at a YouTube channel, a lady by the name Anik Gakombe, a Rwandese who lived through the genocide time. And this lady lost all her family members, to the genocide. And definitely you can imagine the amount of trauma, that she had to deal with. Right now she's gone over it. She's rebounded back, and she's becoming, a testament and transforming people's life and changing people's life, around the world. We can think of other stories such as the one that is happening right now in terms of COVID-19. Things have been shaken. People have lost jobs, lost loved ones, economic crumbling, job losses, people being displaced, even becoming harder for some of the people not even to pay rent, leave alone the rent. Even the basic need in the house has become a challenge to some extent, and people being displaced from their own places, and it's a difficult period of time. And all these incidences that happens can amount to trauma, but one of the things that I wanted us to also look at is the causes of trauma. Many things causes trauma. Dalia mentioned about job losses. There are issues of health crisis, terminal illnesses, or even continued illnesses. Death of loved ones, or family members or friends. Sudden displacements, hurt by others, working or living in violent context, stress, burnout, so forth and so on. So then what then is trauma healing? Trauma healing is healing of emotional and psychological wound through the process of speaking out, sharing, and developing resilience in order to rebound from the shock or loss. And then I wanted to ask you, what does your culture teach you to do with your emotions? For example, when you're hurting inside, most of us coming, I know on this side of East Africa, we are Africans, and we have that African culture. So in our African culture, is it wrong for men to weep? If so, then there is a problem, because speaking out or weeping or just being emotional sometimes can help, because it can be one way of healing. So, what might be some additional things you might try that will be healthy ways of releasing sadness and painful emotions? Now, we will have a couple of activities in this particular conference. And activity number one is what we call the river of life, of your life. You just need to take your time. This is an activity one. Think of your life journey since childhood to this point. Then draw by writing down the map of your life in the form of ups and downs based on key periods when you were either down or up. And then share with your partner, and if possible, share with the team. And that process of sharing can be one step to healing. Activity number two, write down one symbol that you always associate with trauma whenever you come across. For example, when you see it, it haunts you. Write down. Then write down one symbol that gives you hope when you want to deal with your negative emotions, such as trauma. That when you see it, it gives you hope automatically. Just write it down. And take the one that you've written that is giving you hope, and help it solve the problem of the one that was having, and that was bringing a trauma to you. Activity number three is an activity that is more practical called breathing therapy. And I want you to take this moment just to take your time to breathe in and breathe out. Let's do it together. Now you're breathing in good things and you're breathing out bad things. So we can choose to breathe peace, breathe in peace, joy, good health, success. And then we can breathe out anxiety, sadness, sickness, and failure. So let's take time. What do you do? Just breathe in. And don't breathe in immediately. Just let it be a process. And then you hold it. And then by the time I'm finishing the bad one, you release the bad ones, okay? So let's breathe in and keep the good things inside first. Breathe in, peace, joy, good health, success. And then breathe out, anxiety, sadness, sickness, failure. It's at that point you are releasing now. When I say failure, you're releasing everything that you're holding in there. And that type of exercise can be a therapy. But how can we overcome trauma? It is through developing what we call personal resilience. And personal resilience is the capacity to rebound from significant shocks or setbacks. When shock occurs, a person loses balance. You don't need to remain there. You have to rebound back by leaning on the people and the resources around you. An example of a ball, it can be thrown and it bounces back. That's resilience. You can fall, but you're going back to your normalcy. That's what we call personal resilience. And in this case, then think of your story of resilience in your personal journey with trauma. And then please write down that story and share the shock you encountered and what helped you rebound. Now, in this case, there's a shock and there's also a rebound system. So you can write, maybe there were a number of shocks, but shock number one, it was this, and I rebounded back by doing this. It happened this year. Even you can take the period of time that, it was either in let's say 2017. This was one of the shocks, and I used this, and I overcame, uh, you know, through doing this and that. So then after you've done that in your writing, then you tell out your story, to your partner, to the team that you're working with, the fellowship group, um, the people that you're thinking that are closer to you, just share your stories of personal shocks, of discovering means of bouncing back, and of your own resilience. And so reflect, definitely you share, another person shares, another person shares. And so it gives you a moment to reflect on what you have learned and how your difficult times have become a means of growth and transformation. Now, we were all this while talking about what we call personal primary trauma. You are the one experiencing it. But there are also other things that lead to trauma, and there are other traumas, such as the one we call secondary trauma. People who work with those who have been traumatized hear many stories of fear, pain, and violence. We become vulnerable to secondary trauma and what we call compassion fatigue. And so you, as a caregiver, or a community leader, or community worker, you have to deal with the normal stresses of a job, as well as the emotional and personal feelings they have for those who suffer. Caregivers, and like the way like many of you are, uh, tend to focus on other people's problems and suffering, and often fail to take care of their own needs. This is dangerous for both caregivers, their families, and for those they are trying to help. So what can we then do? We have to take care of ourselves, properly known as self-care. And how can you do your own self-care? Self-care can be done by exercising, for example. It stimulates, and it's good. It refreshes. And rest. It's not always working, burning out. Rest, take time to rest. Read scripture. Serve. If some people find it a therapy when they are serving, it's good. So continue to serve. But again, also set boundaries. You don't have to be in this, in that, in that, in that. You don't have boundaries. You have to set boundaries so that when it comes to now your personal life, your personal time, you just focusing on yourself. The other thing is journaling, like writing, like your stories. Maybe each day you're trying to write. It may be painful, but you write down, and it becomes a therapy. You also take time to pray. You fast. You share or speak out, and so forth and so on. Now, I wanted us to look at something very, very important when we're talking about self-care. Um, we cannot only sometimes we cannot only solve our own problems. We have to rely on other people um, to find support. For example, either there's a friend, a close friend, or a close family member that you confide in. So what happens is then you have to identify the people and groups that are part of you know your life. For example, I want to mention like four things that you needed to do. Number one, we call it one-on-one bonding, bonding one to one. And in this, you identify who are your closest friends. For example, who is your closest friend, whom you can share something with and bond with, and so that becomes your support system. Number two is bridging or having small group support. For example, do you have a few good friends who are able to move you across your differences and provide genuine support for you? You have to think about that. Maybe that's a small fellowship group. And then number three is you also link and connect to the world around you. Do you have links beyond your own community? Like with other people or organizations and networks, so forth and so on. It's high time that you reflect and take time to just write those names down, list, so that you know that even in the global community or around the world, you have some people that you can connect with. And number four is special support. Have you found times when getting expert or special support has made you a great difference, big difference? Like, for example, do you need some specialized support, like a counselor, like a person that can pray for you? That type of specialized support. Is your situation above, like, let's say, just sharing with one-on-one the normal friend and maybe going to a clinical person who's an expertise in a specific area, like a counselor, specialized support? I think it's high time also that you needed to think about that. Well, then our activity number four is then, what are some of the potential shocks that you anticipate and how can you rebound from it? List the name of the shock. The shock is here, and then you say, and then list the best tool or approach that will help you rebound from it. And it's high time that you have to take your time to list and go through the list. In conclusion, I want to tell you, self-control is a gift from God. It is designed for you to overcome things. Is life mastering you, or you are mastering life? It is when you speak out that you find healing. The secret of venting your emotions is confession. You are a new creation. And, the practical ways to overcome trauma, and even from the spiritual standpoint, for example, personally myself as a Christian, I will want to advise, the following: accept help and support from others. You know, focus on focus on what is true, not what you feel. Um, Waste no energy on revenge. Learn to forgive, because trauma drains, So don't waste your energy on resentment, retaliation, or revenge. Hope and trust in God for the strength. Meditate on His Word. Speak out, confess any anything that is hurting you inside. Take control of your thoughts. Refuse to fall back, into all the ways. See yourself as God sees you. So I would like to thank you for the time that you've had just to listen. And my advice is that you just take your time to um, answer some of the questions that I posed. You know, I know the video, I did it faster. It will have taken a longer period if it's, one-on-one, face-to-face, because there's a lot of practical work that is needed to be done. But at your free time, I will um, urge you that you take time to go through, and then you'll be able to find some difference. It's been a pleasure talking to you. My name is Peter Durito, and God bless you.